Hi, everyone. I am David Lipton from the Reckoning, July 4th, 2030. Welcome to our third in a series of weekly podcasts. This episode is about the United States' ability and willingness to project power abroad. Where are the Straits of Hormuz, Gaza Strip, the Chagos Islands, the towns of Bakhmut and Avdiivka in the Ukraine? Why care about what happens over there? They're so far away. Look at this map of the Straits of Hormuz. What is the visual that stands out? Clearly the flow of oil through the straits with an effective sea lane width for oil traffic of only 2 miles. Around 20% of the world's oil flow through that narrow waterway. In fact, that area is a major choke point. Okay, big deal, you might say. Let's look at the second map with the names of countries in bold black print and the bodies of water have their usual blue color. On the western side are Turkey, Syria, Jordan, Israel, and Egypt, along with the Black Sea, Mediterranean, and Red Sea. From the middle of the map to the east are some of the larger countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and India. The two prominent bodies of water are the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. First question. Which country's navy is the main guarantor of the safety of the sea lanes and bodies of water? You guessed it. It's the United States. That's capital U, capital S, the United States. Now stay with me, please. Second question. Do we have the courage to fight for our beliefs at home and abroad and to help our allies do the same? Let's go back in time for a moment to July 2nd, 1863, the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. I particularly remember one scene from the motion picture Gettysburg. In the second day of the battle, late in the afternoon, the 20th Maine is marching towards the battlefield under the command of Joshua Chamberlain, who taught rhetoric at Bowdoin College. His commanding officer is Strong Vincent. He's from Harvard. Chamberlain is told to march his men to just below the crest of the Little Round Top. His men are to protect the southern flank of the Union line and hold the line at all costs. Otherwise, the left flank of the Union Army would collapse. Then Strong said, "Now let's see how professors fight." Can anyone today seriously imagine any professor or anyone else from our professional and intellectual elites fighting on a battlefield in defense of U.S. interests? The citizen soldiers of our Civil War and of World War II seem as distant from us today as the legions of Rome of the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE. If you have trouble going back that far, then move forward in time to World War II. Perhaps you have seen the kind of people we sent into battle in the movie Saving Private Ryan. TV series like Band of Brothers, The Pacific War, Masters of the Air gave us vivid images of Americans at war, fighting abroad for our values. They just went out there and did their jobs. Above all, there is the classic homage to our fighting spirit, a TV series called Victory at Sea, produced in the 1950s. Okay, I'm sure you get the picture now. The eyes of the world are on the U.S. It is all about our ability to project our power abroad in a consistent manner so that our friends and enemies know exactly where we stand, what we want, and are willing to hold the line, just like the men from Bowdoin College and Harvard did on July 2nd, 1863. Stay with me now and consider what has changed in the last 50 years and what has not. After World War II in 1945 and until 2000, we were the unrivaled colossus that bestrode the world. But now the strength of the U.S. economy relative to other economies is steadily eroding, but has not yet reached the critical point of no return. The bipolar world of the Cold War, the U.S. led West versus the Soviet Union led East, is gone. It has given way to a multipolar world with the U.S., China, and lesser regional powers like Russia and Iran jockeying for positions. Do you remember our episode on facts are stubborn things? Well, here are some economic facts. The U.S. share of the world GDP, that's gross domestic product, is today about 25.2%, slightly below its long-term average of 28.7%. China is in second place with 17.8% of the world GDP. Russia is at a paltry 3%, and Iran is a ludicrous 0.18%. That U.S. dominance of power is commanding. But is the U.S. still willing to use its force? As Henry Kissinger once put it, we must have the ability and determination to act alone or with a regional grouping of powers if our strategic interests so dictate. Okay, what are our strategic interests abroad? The fundamental strategic interest of the United States has remained the same since 1945. The U.S. is in effect a continental island and operates as all maritime empires have done since time immemorial. Once again, look at the maps, and that can focus and clarify your minds. 3 maps will cross the screen as I list what we as a nation must do, and do so consistently with purpose and with vigor. We have already spoken of and displayed the first 2 maps. The third one is of the Chagos Islands and Diego Garcia. They're important because they are the key logistical base for the U.S. Navy in the Arabian Sea and Pacific Oceans. If they are lost, then our ability to project force is greatly diminished. The last 2 maps of Israel and its neighbors and the Ukraine are the latest flashpoints where the U.S., through its allies, must hold the line. As applied to U.S. circumstances, the strategy requires that our nation consistently pursues the following policies. 1. The maintenance of unobstructed sea lanes to connect us and trade with the rest of the world, Canada and Mexico excepted. 2. Prevention of any combination of external forces, be they nations or closely directed groups and organizations, which might weaken U.S. commercial and political bonds and alliances beyond its shores. These are key points to remember. And the third point, most important of all, the U.S. must ensure it offers its friends and enemies abroad a greater incentive to deal with the United States than with each other. Otherwise, U.S. influence and its ability to act abroad will decline. The ability to act physically both precedes intentions, because if one does not have the capacity to act, then one's wishes are irrelevant. Further, the capacity to act at all is eclipsed by the Republic's financial ability to maintain its forces abroad. Financial strength at home is the linchpin of any U.S. foreign policy. It is all very well to speak breezily about foreign policy, strategic interests, war on terror, economic development initiatives, and so forth, but all this is just talk, and it's dissipated by the lack of the nation's capability to deliver. People and nations are impressed when one's home is kept in good financial order. Ours is not. Our current economic and political situation are in obvious disorder. When our total national debt over 50 years has grown more than 3 times faster than our national GDP, and the domestic political situation borders paralysis, our enemies in the Eastern Hemisphere sense the weakness and indecision. They will likely believe that the steady erosion of U.S. economic and financial power will erode our ability and willingness to project force abroad. Our enemies may be right. Just look at the actions of Putin in the Ukraine, Xi Jinping in the South China Sea, and the mullah's projection of power in the Middle East. If we imagine 2 parallel computer screens, one with Kissinger's quotation where he quotes or speaks of only the U.S. is strong enough domestically and economically to assure worldwide leadership, and on the other screen, a graph illustrating skyrocketing national debt. Only then can we sense the abyss that is before us. The unintended consequence of U.S. supremacy is the strategic dependence of our allies and friends on our continued strength. and single-mindedness of purpose. If we falter, they falter. If the American colossus becomes first financially and then politically unwilling to lead, we will have entered a world where the triumph of evil becomes possible because good men do nothing. We may convince ourselves, and it appears the president has convinced himself, that restraint is a virtue. Our friends and enemies may draw another conclusion, that we are getting weaker, less willing, and less able to sustain extended military commitments abroad. So let's answer the question of why care about what is happening out there. Well, those places are the outer boundaries of our empire of liberty, also known as the Western world. Our enemies abroad know this and feel the tide is running in their favor. Just because we are thousands of miles away, removed from these places, does not mean we should be indifferent to what happens out there. Our strategic interests will require that we not only make our presence felt, but that we hold the line. Time to go. You will hear from me, David Lipton, in a week's time when we reflect on a line from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. You can access my ideas and thoughts by visiting Amazon.com and search for The Reckoning, July 4th, 2030.